Hello OpenPSYC students, my name is Dr. Curtis, and as part of the cognition chapter I'm going to be talking to you today about schemas and accessibility. Schemas and accessibility are ways that our brain accesses and understands information and organizes it so that we can use it later on. So throughout the course of this video I want to make sure that you understand two major things. First, what is cognitive accessibility? That is, accessing thoughts inside your brain. I also want you to understand the factors that might influence that. I also want you to be able to describe to me the term schemas and how information is organized into schemas in your brain. But before we do that, I want to do a little activity, and here's what we want to do. I want you to think about several things, and I'm going to read your mind through YouTube. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a category, and I'm going to give you a letter of the alphabet, and you are going to think of an example of that category that starts with that letter. So I want you to think as fast as you can. I don't want you to think too hard about it. Just do it the first thing that comes to your head. Think about a country that starts with the letter N. Now think of a person that begins with the letter S. Their name starts with the letter S. And think of an animal that begins with the letter E. Did you do it? Okay, now's the part where I read your mind. I think that you thought of an elephant. Am I right? Now some of you out there are saying, that's amazing. The other ones are saying, no, I thought of something else. Well, to show you that this is not a fluke, that most people actually do think about elephants, we asked this question in a large introductory psychology class at the University of Maryland. We did it through clickers. We asked them this: what animal did you think of? We did the same thing. And these were the options that we gave them: elephant, eagle, emu, echidna, and then others. And they clicked in, and here's what we found. 82% of the students thought about elephants. That's more than chance. And what's interesting about this is that you could have thought of any one of those animals, or you could have thought of eels, etc., and it would have been equally correct. But why does everyone think of elephants? It's not even the first in alphabetical order. Eagle would have been first in alphabetical order, but people think about elephants first. Why is it that we have that piece of information come to the top of our brain before other pieces of information? Why would we choose elephant instead of any one of these other animals? To explain this, we need to talk about cognitive accessibility and how your brain works. So this is your brain. And when I ask your brain to do a task, for example, I want you to think of an animal name that starts with the letter E. It's got to go in that brain, and it's got to come up with a piece of information that fits those categories. So to explain this, I want to use an analogy. I want you to think about your brain like an aquarium. So that's an aquarium with fish in it. So let's go inside your brain right now. So here's your aquarium. Just like an aquarium has different fish in the aquarium are more accessible or less accessible. Well, what you see right here on the left is accessibility can be either low or high. Things at the bottom of the tank are less accessible than things at the top of the tank. What I'm saying is, if I asked you to go in there and scoop out a fish with a little net, then you're probably not going to dig all the way down to the bottom and scoop one of those bottom fish. You're going to scoop out a fish that's close to the top. Well, the same kind of thing happens in your brain, that there are certain concepts that are closer to the top. So we're going to think about concepts in our brain as fish in this aquarium. Some fish, like this elephant fish, is closer to the top compared to the echidna fish, the eagle fish, and the emu fish. So each one of these fish are the different concepts in our brain. And if I ask you, think of an animal that starts with the letter E, when you scoop out that piece of information out of your brain, you're not going to scoop all the way at the bottom. You're going to get something that's more accessible, something near the top of the tank. Well, what makes something closer to the top of the tank compared to other pieces of information? These are the determinants of cognitive accessibility. So things are more accessible in your brain if they're used frequently. So imagine that you work in the zoo and you work in the echidna enclosure. Well, you got to use the word echidna all the time. So pass me that echidna feed. Oh, I got to watch this echidna. Oh, how cute, look, that echidna. You're using the word echidna over and over and over and over again. Well, that means that you're going to access that piece of information over and over and over again. And so it's not going to sink down to the bottom of the tank. It's going to stay close to the top. Things that are emotionally significant to you are also going to be closer to the top or more accessible. So that time when you were attacked by wild emus is probably has some emotional significance in your life, and so it's probably going to be a little bit more accessible than just the concept of an echidna that you might have heard about once when you went to the zoo. Probably the most interesting one of these, though, is what's called priming. Priming has to do with how recently you've accessed a piece of information. And by accessing a piece of information, it brings it to the top of the tank. So what do I mean by that? So let's go back to your brain. So here's where we were. We had the elephant fish. The concept of elephant was closer to the top, and then echidna and eagle and emu, they were all down at the bottom. Well, what happens, though, if you see an eagle, a bald eagle, or if I ask you, what's the animal that represents the United States of America? Well, in your brain, then you think of this, or you see this image of the bald eagle. Well, as soon as you do that, you are accessing that piece of information, and what that does is it takes that piece of information, the eagle, and brings it to the top of the tank. By having you use that piece of information recently, I prime that information. So if you saw an eagle before, the eagle's going to come to the top of your tank, and then later on I ask you, think of an animal that starts with the letter E. Well, you've been primed with eagle recently, and so you're more likely to access that piece of information because it has been primed. It's been made more accessible. It's been used more recently. Well, what's interesting about this is this concept of schemas. So a schema is a collection of linked concepts. So for example, the concept of bird has lots of other concepts connected to it. And so I'm going to represent the concept of bird as a little blob right here. But bird is not by itself. I connect the concept of bird with the concept of animal. They're connected. And bird also has feathers and beaks and claws. All of those are connected. And also this image of this pigeon as a representation of a bird. Those are all connected. Well, so are the concepts of can fly, has wings, being dangerous in terms of defecation when in the air. Also, that penguins and ostriches can't fly, but they are still an example of the birds. Those are all connected to each other. So are pigeons and cities. And the time that I was in this one city and this lady was feeding all those birds, those memories, as well as eagle, which is a bird, and that's connected with America, and it makes me think of the bald eagle. All of these concepts are connected together. They're all part of a schema that I have about birds. The schema is all of those concepts, the group of concepts, all of them together. So if we think about this, here's my schema of an eagle, right? Eagle is connected with the concept of bald, which is connected to the concept of bird, which is connected to the concept of claws. Well, just like fish don't swim by themselves, they swim in a school, so do concepts in your mind. And remember how we primed eagle before? If I prime eagle, that is I use it or make it more accessible, it doesn't just make the one term eagle more accessible, but everything in the schema or the school of fish comes along with it. They all swim together. So what that means is that if I want you to think about eagle, I don't even have to say the word eagle or show you a picture of an eagle. I could start talking to you about bald or America or raptor or whatever it happens to be, and that means that everything connected with the term bald is going to all become more accessible together. Well, one of the concepts that's involved with bald is eagle, and eagle becomes more accessible. It is primed. It becomes easier for you to access when you need to think of a piece of information or use a piece of information that fits the category of animal and starts with the letter E. What's interesting about this is that you have schemas about literally every concept that's out there. Anything that you know about, you have a schema about. It's connected with other pieces of information. And that includes this. Now, I want you to look at these, and I'm going to explain this. Please don't think I'm sexist, but we'll figure it out. This is a schema that is out there. Someone who is nurturing, moody, kind, bad at math. What is this a schema about? Well, some of you are saying, well, that's a schema about women. Now, I'm not saying that I believe this. That's not true. But what I'm pointing out is that schemas are the same as stereotypes. That is, stereotypes are examples of social schemas. And you don't have to believe them to actually have them be connected together in your mind. I don't have to believe that women are nurturing or moody or kind or bad at math. I don't have to believe any of those things. But what we do find is that if you remind people about part of a schema, everything else becomes more accessible. In fact, I can remind women about their femininity, their identification as woman, and if they have bad at math as part of their schema, then it is likely that they'll actually perform worse on a math test. This is what's called stereotype threat. Schemas are groups of information about a specific topic. Well, stereotypes are pieces of information that we have about groups of people. And so stereotypes are examples of schemas. And just like other schemas, stereotypes actually become primed when you access any part of the schema. This has been a brief discussion about accessibility, cognitive accessibility, the things that influence accessibility, as well as schemas, and how schemas can be primed and be made more accessible together as a group. Thank you for watching.